Now, as we've been hearing this morning, during the war period, meals were often created using the most basic of ingredients as part of the rationing era. And we now know that Georgina Landemer, who cooked for the Churchill family from 1939 throughout the duration of the war, made sure that Winston Churchill enjoyed a sensible and nourishing diet, even though, according to Mrs. Landemer, Churchill was an incredibly fussy eater. But she was often able to produce something delicious that satisfied his appetite for simple British food. And one of her classic recipes was for a cake known as Churchill's fruit cake. Seren Charrington-Hollins is a food historian from Newtown, just over the border in Powys, and joins us now. Hiya, Seren.
Hello, how are you?
I'm well, thanks. How are you doing?
Not too bad at all.
Jolly good. This fruit cake sounds all right, this fruit cake for Churchill. How special was it?
Well, the thing with Georgina Landemer was that it wasn't just the fruit cake. I mean, the fruit cake obviously was very important, and it was something nourishing and filling, and obviously got Churchill through the war years. But there were lots of other dishes that she produced, and in a sense, when Churchill talks about tummy time, he says that basically through the war years she was the woman who helped him with tummy time to make some of the most important moments in Britain's battle against the Nazis. And essentially, whether it was getting through abdication, in which she produced on that particular time, she produced a vanilla fig ice cream with cherry sauce, and she produced lots of other very luxurious things that we wouldn't necessarily associate with wartime, because Churchill was known for always being in debt, and he spent a huge amount of his available funds on champagne, and he was particularly fond of things like foie gras and caviar and all sorts of wonderful things that we wouldn't think of as wartime. And he was thought of as actually being a little out of touch with what the everyday Briton was eating at that time. Because when we look at the fruit cake, you think about the vine fruits, the sugar, the fat in that. It wasn't something that everybody could create.
No, I heard there were 5
era.
eggs in it as well.
Yeah, I know. So it's completely out of touch, and that's why I just mentioned, that he was known for being out of touch with what Britain was eating, because he famously looked at actually a ration that actually Georgina Landemer had to explain to him that this is not a day's ration. This is actually this is the full ration we're looking at here.
Wow,
this is not a day for somebody. So he had quite an appetite. He was known for being a little bit of a fussy eater. He was known as also having a number of digestive issues, and he got lots of different advice on this from, he needed to avoid all sorts of red meats and sort of pickles and things, through to other doctors saying, don't eat the dairy products such as cheese and keep away from strong coffee. So he did have a lot of digestive issues. One thing that she was very good at producing for him was a consommé, and he would enjoy the consommé cold, as well as a warm dish, but he'd enjoy that cold as a supper dish. And there were all sorts of things that were looked at as being very important for food getting it through. And I think generally, though, for the British public as a whole, baking and cooking contributed to the war effort during World War II. And this was seen by people like the wife of Lord Hankey, who was part of Churchill's war cabinet, and Lady Hankey promoted nutritious food as being almost as important as the munition of the war. So she encouraged people to reduce food waste and win the war in our kitchens was her catchphrase. And so there certainly was, whether you look at it being something like, Churchill's fruit cake, which was produced and wouldn't be something that the everyday man could enjoy. Instead, we'd be having economical fruit cakes made with very little saved fat, also that could have been of whatever you were having. Whatever fats you could get hold of would have gone into an economical fruit cake. And it's a very dry cake. I've made it myself. It's perfectly nutritious, but it's very, very dry. And it kind of does drink your cup of tea for you. Or you've got Churchill's luxurious version with his eggs and his fine fruit and sugars and fats in there. Or you look at what Lady Hankey was promoting, which was very much a diet of fruit and vegetables. And in her own recipe book, she has things like treacle tarts, but there's economical versions of these dishes.
Sure.
I think certainly food was the thing that we did get us through the war, because everybody, even now, I mean, we look at the pandemic that we're in, people are turning to food, and they're turning to a lot of home baking.
Yeah. Would you say that's one of the correlations really between the war years and what's going on today? I mean, we've got Boris, we've got Churchill, and then we've got a situation, haven't we? And would you say that's one of the correlations?
I would say so. I think in any times of need, whenever we're in any sort of difficulty, we do turn to food, and food is one of the things that connects us. So if you look at people at the moment suffering because they can't keep in touch with loved ones, food, I've seen a lot of accounts of people cooking, a favourite dish that they had at home, and really remembering those food memories, because food is something more than just something that sustains us. It's something that also is encapsulated by memories. So we really enjoy food and cling to food, not just because it's something that's nutritious that we need to have, but also because we need that emotional support that food gives us.
It's comfort, isn't it? It's comforting.
Yes, it's comfort food.
It is
and
indeed.
the comfort food's not just fatty foods, but
absolutely.
things that are nourishing.
Well, yeah, we need a little enjoyment. We like it. Are there any recipes still in existence today besides the fruitcake, which we still enjoy from that period?
Oh, lots of them. I mean, period food. If you want to look at wartime food in particular, I'm going to talk about wartime food because of the Churchill reference. But wartime food, really the war changed how we ate. The Second World War particularly changed how we ate. Now, there's two ways of looking at this. There is when we came off ration in the 1950s, we suddenly enjoyed more fatty food and more sugary food than ever before. And our sugar content in our diet went up higher than we've ever seen. So we started enjoying all the foods that we were deprived of during the war years. But one of the things that stayed with us is actually introducing, and we keep seeing it come back into fashion, is introducing vegetables into cakes and sweet bakes as a way of sweetening them. So carrot cakes, beetroot cakes, things like that. One of the big things that did go out of fashion as a result of Second World War was, it was rhubarb went completely out of fashion. It was, there's two reasons for this. We grew a lot of rhubarb during the Second World War, and we ate a lot. Now, a lot of people got very fed up of rhubarb, and it probably wasn't as sweet as we would enjoy it now because we didn't have the sugar available. But also, we destroyed a lot of our rhubarb plants because we weren't allowing them the time that they need to recover. So we actually destroyed a lot of the rhubarb crowns, so people didn't have it growing quite as abundantly. There were all sorts of recipes that we'll never see again, I don't think, things like parsley honey, which is essentially parsley boiled up with a bit of sugar and vinegar to make a substitute for honey. There were all sorts of substitute recipes that we had, things from mock salmon, was one that I remember making. That's essentially a powdered scrambled egg that's got lots of parsley and vinegar and other things in it. I can't see those coming back into fashion.
No, you're not exactly tantalising the taste buds with that. But coming back to the cake, I wouldn't mind a slice of the Churchill fruit cake. As we bow out here, have you ever actually tasted it, and how good was it?
It's very good, actually. It's a very rich fruit cake. Fruit cake is a wonderful thing. It needs time to cook and time to mature. I think once you've got hold of it, and everybody likes a slightly different fruit cake. I like the rich, dark fruit cakes. So it's very similar to a lot of period recipes I'm seeing. Of course, she was a very, very talented cook. They were very lucky to have her, the Churchill family, actually, because she was incredibly talented. Married to a French chef, who she undoubtedly also, they must have between them must have enjoyed and made some fantastic food.
Oh, yeah.
But I think with fruit cakes, the thing is, it's the time element, and you've got to take time in the making and time in the baking, and then maturing in a tin is fantastic. But I don't think you can beat a fruit cake. And although they're costly to make, they are economical in the fact that they do keep.
And you don't need a lot, do you? Because they're so rich. You only, mind you, that said, you are talking to gluttonous Gooding here, who loves a bit of cake. And with my birthday this weekend, I shall be indulging in some as well.
And I think the thing is at home, when we're on lockdown as well, good old bread pudding.
Oh, now stop it. Yeah. Now you're starting. Seren, it's been lovely talking to you. My mum used to make the best bread pudding in the world. Seren, it's been lovely talking to you. Thank you so
very much. Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
What a lovely chat. Seren Charrington-Hollins, a food historian from Newtown in Powys. Yeah, it's all about the cake.
Things are a bit different right now. And school looks very different too. Desks are kitchen tables.